The map that lied. The day the river moved, Maia Quinn was cataloging errors. Her job at the City Archive of Isola was to compare old maps to the new satellite printouts and annotate the ways humans had misseen their own home. Most errors were charming. A peninsula somebody insisted was an island, a village labeled twice under different names, a washed-out road drawn as a heroic boulevard. Lines, illusions, guesses. You could feel a cartographer's optimism in the ink. At 1417, Maia found an error that should have been charming and wasn't. On a 1978 municipal plate, the Azure River crossed the city just north of the Iron Railway, brushed the old tannery, and wound past Dockyard 3. On the satellite printout from last month, the river did not touch the tannery at all. It slid south of the railway. In the photograph it was a blue silk ribbon, bright as new paint, and it was in the wrong place. Maia frowned and rubbed the printout with her knuckle as if she could smudge water across paper. She noted the coordinates and did what she always did when something bothered her. She walked. Out on the street the city smelled like sea salt and oranges. Isola was a place of stacked terraces and stacked histories, sun-weathered plaster, graffiti you could read like poetry if you slowed down. Maia drifted downhill to the river with her satchel thumping at her hip, her pencil tucked behind her ear, her mind a slow wheel turning. She had grown up on its banks, learned to skip stones where the water widened. She could still balance in her palm 3 flat stones and feel the old hunger to throw them all at once to see if the ripples would braid. At the tannery, she stared at the water and the water stared back, undeniable and glassy, running south of the railway, nowhere near where it used to be. The river had moved. 2. A stranger on a bicycle. The first person to confirm it wasn't a trick of her eyes was a courier who braked too hard and nearly toppled into her. "Watch it," he said automatically, then followed her gaze. "Huh." He took off his helmet. He had a face like a cliff, firm, sun-bitten, dependable, and an absurdly delicate gold cuff in one ear. A wireframe map was tattooed along his forearm. The ink so fine the roads looked like hairline fractures. "What?" he asked. "The river," Maia said. "It's wrong." "Because it's south of the tracks now?" He said it like a joke, but his eyes narrowed in a way she recognized. People who lived in maps watched the world constantly for lapses. "It used to be north," Maia said. "I can show you 100 plates. My grandmother swore the tannery used to dump straight into it." People picketed. "Put the river before profit." That was the slogan. He squinted. "I deliver to that old tannery twice a week. The owner is a cooper now, not a tanner. He makes barrels for white wine. He told me once his father never worked with water, only fire and staves." "That's not right," Maia said softly. "It's not wrong either," he said and stuck out a hand. "Alec." "Maia. Do you want to come with me?" he blurted. "I'm going to Quayle Street anyway. My uncle runs the antique instrument shop. He's a crank. He remembers everything wrong. You can triangulate." Maia hesitated, work, rules, routines, but the river had moved, and maybe routines should too. "Okay," she said. 3. The crank with perfect ears. Alec's uncle's name was Petter, and he wore the world like a bad violin. Too tight, too out of tune. His shop smelled of resin, old lacquer, and the grief of parting with beloved things. On the wall hung violas with cracked ribs, a sackbut, a glass harmonica with a cracked bowl, and a frame drum whose skin was painted with a night map of Isola. Pale buildings, black alleys, a silver river threading through. "That's beautiful," Maia said. Petter peered over his glasses. "It's wrong," he said. "I bought it because it's wrong." "What's wrong?" Maia asked, breath quickening. "The way it remembers the river," Petter said. "No one believes me, but the Azure used to run north of the track. Everyone says I've mixed it with the lapis in the North Quarter, but I played for fishermen at the tannery protests. I played until my fingers bled. Either I've gone mad or the river has." Alec shot Maia a look that meant, "Told you so." Maia said, "Can I see your earliest city map?" Petter sighed, rummaged, and hauled out a rolled plate. It was the night map from the drum skin, older, more detailed, streets drawn with a lover's patience. "Anonymous," he said. "Made for a sailor who had no sense of day." He called it the map of returns. The river was drawn as a silver thread and it ran north of the track. "Will you sell this?" Maia asked. Petter's mouth tugged. "I'll lend it," he said. "On one condition. You bring back an answer." I'm tired of being wrong. 4. A city of returns. Where do you take a question so big it rearranges your street? Maia took it to the archives, to a basement room called the Stack where iron ladders kissed pipes and the air was thick with paper and lost dates. She hauled Petter's plate to a work table and unfurled it with weighted gloves. The silver river looked as if the ink still glistened. The cartographer had drawn more than streets. Labeled in tiny calligraphy, the map contained places you return and return to. Mama's back steps, a chemist's counter, a dog that slept under a bicycle, a bench that knew every version of a grief. Maia felt something inside her fold open like a card cut from a single sheet. She did not believe, had never believed, in magic, but she believed in mistakes that were faithful to something truer than facts. She wanted to defend the cartographer, to argue that this was a map that measured not land but attachment. On a whim so light she could have missed it, she took a drafting pencil and dotted the path from the tannery to her grandmother's house, then from her grandmother's house to the shore, where they had bought sugar donuts. The pencil marks gleamed like graphite stars. The room changed. No sound, no seismic jolt. Just a settling of the air as if the stack had exhaled. Maia looked down. Her dots had connected themselves into a faint silver line. It lived now within the old ink. Inseparable. The map had taken her in. She snatched her hands back. Her heart beat like a foot on hollow stairs. What did you do? Alec asked from the doorway. How long have you been there? Maia said, more sharply than she intended. Long enough to see the air fall, he said. She told him what she had done. He listened without laughter. Maps keep stories, he said. My mother used to tell me that. Ink is just the crust. Maia wanted to say there was no such thing as a cartographic haunting, but the river was still in the wrong place and the silver line shone with a logic that felt like dream logic. Coherent while you let it be, full of holes if you interrogated it with daylight. Do you trust me? Alex said. No, Maia said, which meant yes enough to try. He held out his forearm with the map tattoo. It was a minimalist version of Isola, lines and intersections. A memory made permanent. Draw on me, he said. With what? Your pencil's not permanent, he said. I just want to see. She touched his skin lightly and drew a tiny where the tannery would be, another where Petter's shop would be, and one where the river first went wrong. His skin warmed under her touch. The dots looked unremarkable. Alec hissed softly. It tickles. And Marin's teeth. What? Sorry, he said laughing. I swear it felt like the dots sank. They looked. The dots did seem to settle into the tattoo, less on top of the ink than inside it. Okay, Maia said. Okay. She wanted rules. If there were rules you could make a field guide. You could work with rules. You could find the corner of the system and pry. Let's test, Alex said. V. Experiments with gravity. They found rules. Nothing too easy, nothing too dramatic, nothing irreversible without a cost. If Maia dotted a route on Petter's map and then walked it, the city would lean to honor it. A shortcut reappeared between high walls that had not touched since she was 10. A cafe she thought had closed after the owner died reopened for a day like a mouth remembering how to sing. If she drew a desire without walking it, nothing happened. If she drew with greed, the silver ink turned dull and left her fingertips cold. Draw to your grandmother, Alex said softly, on the day they reached the hill above the ferries. She's dead, Maia said. You can't return to the dead. You can return to the place you loved her from, he said. So Maia dotted a path from the stack to the steps of the building where her grandmother's hands had peeled oranges and scraped the pith from between the segments. The air settled again. On the steps a woman was humming a lullaby in a language Maia didn't know. On the third stair, in the usual spot, sat a plastic crate of oranges with thin skins. A sign read "Take one, for luck." Maia took one, peeled it with gratitude that bordered on apology, and did not cry until the peel had unscrolled to the pithy star at the center. Alec looked away. The map loves you, he said. It's using me, Maia said. I'm the stylus. He grinned. Then let's write something that matters. 6. The cartographer's error. The river haunted them. Petter's belief made a chorus with Maia's childhood, with the way the city had accepted the return of a staircase hum as if it had been waiting. If the map could return a bench and a lullaby, could it return the course of a river? Rivers carve, Alex said. They don't listen. But every river also follows old weaknesses, Maia said. Faults, seams. The city is layered. Maybe the map knows the layer where it was truer. Maybe all we need is a line drawn at the right depth. They sat with Petter's map on the table between them and argued the ethics. They did not tell anyone else. Some work you do alone or with exactly two. Anything larger and it becomes a project, and projects accumulate money and slogans, and one day you're not drawing a line with love but enforcing it with committees. What if we fix a mistake? Maia said. What if it's not a mistake? Alex said. What if the river moved because it had to? We could flood the South Quarter. We test, Maia said. We test in trickles. She began to draw microscopically. A hairline thread from where the river had once brushed the tannery, no broader than a tear. Then they went to the city and waited. For 2 days nothing changed. On the third, a trickle crept through the old culvert under the railway. It smelled like time spent underground, like iron and moss. It was not enough to flood anything. It was enough to say, yes. They moved the thread a little farther. At each stage, they walked, they watched. They asked questions they framed as jokes. Did anyone remember fishing near the tannery? Or did that make their face crumple as if at a word that tasted almost right? Old men shrugged. A woman with a chipped tooth said she had a scar on her ankle from a boy who pushed her into the river off the tannery wall. She laughed as if relieved to share it. Alec asked, "What's the worst that could happen?" "Everything," Maia said. "But we won't let it." 7. The city fights back. The city noticed. You could tell because it started resisting in petty ways. Doors that refused to open, buses that arrived early, streetlights that flickered in warning Morse. At night, dreams piled up in Maia's bed like damp maps. In one, the river put its mouth to her ear and whispered coordinates that corresponded to nothing. 000, 000, the naval joke, Null Island, the impossible place where maps pinned their axis and pretended that mattered. One morning Maia woke to find a thin silver line on her wrist, where no bracelet had been. It ran from pulse to palm. "You're mocked," Alex said. "So are you," she said, and traced the line that had crept up his forearm to his elbow. It flowed through his tattoo like a tidal river in spring. "Is this bad?" he asked. "It's precise," she said. "It's a promise. Or a threat. Or both." They stopped for coffee at Dawn's, the cafe that sold sugar donuts in paper bags. The owner had changed 3 times since Maia's childhood, but the counter had not. You could measure your height against its oak and see how far you needed to go. "Delivery," said a barista to Alec, surprised. "I'm off route," he said. "So are we all," she said wryly, and slid a biscuit onto their plate. "On the house. It's a good day for sugar." They ate, and for a minute the work receded and the room became the kind of place where nothing bad happens because everyone is watching. When they reached the river again, the trickle they'd coaxed north was wider. At its edge a boy floated a paper boat with a red thread mast. He let it go. The boat swung along the new edge, took the current as if it had been born to it, and swept past the tannery foundations that had been bricked up after the protests that, yes, had happened. Maia could see the echo of the sign letters on the brick where someone had scraped paint. "Do we stop?" Alec asked. "We stop if it wants to drown us," Maia said. "Otherwise we keep going in breaths." 8. The archivist who wasn't. On the day the mayor called her in, Maia wore her best shirt and the face she wore for difficult donors. Agreeable, alert, non-committal, hopeful. The mayor's office had a window designed for cameras. River, railway, skyline. The mayor herself was small, sharp, and tired in a way that made Maia like her instantly. "I looked you up," the mayor said without hello. "There's a quiet little file, 3 departmental commendations, 1 note about deviating from protocol to preserve an oral history, and a reprimand that reads more like a love letter." Maia swallowed. "My work is careful," she said. "I'm sure," the mayor said. "There are rumors. They say you're responsible for this delightful little northern creep the Azure is attempting. Should I be alarmed?" Maia weighed the map in her head and decided to tell a version of the truth. "I think the city is remembering itself," she said. "You mean people," the mayor said. "I mean the city," Maia said. "And people, yes, because we're inseparable. But also the stones, the culverts, the bedrock. The place is waiting to be returned to." The mayor looked at her a long time. Finally she said, "When I was 12, we lived in Dockyard 3. My father fished off the tannery wall. I fell in. I swallowed a mouthful of water and a mouthful of chemicals. The doctor made a face and said, "Consider it inoculation against nonsense." I have never been able to abide nonsense since. But this nonsense feels like a correction. Maia held her breath. "You have a week," the mayor said. "No floods. No disasters. Bring me a report that explains in a way I can defend in court why the river asked to move and why we obliged. If you can't, I will deny it twice and then call it an act of God, and both will land badly." When Maia left, Alec was waiting on the steps, rocking on his heels. "You're pale," he said. "I've been given a week to move a river in sentences," she said. "Then we should buy better pencils," he said. 9. The 7 days. They worked like people who had invented a religion and were trying to make it gentle. Day 1, they followed Petter's map edge to edge, tracing every place you returned to in a mesh, so that the river's new old course would be held like lace, not forced like chain. Day 2. They listened. If the city is an orchestra, then its tuning is not the oboe's A but the sound of feet at midday. They mapped the rhythms. Day 3. They asked forgiveness in every form they knew. They wrote notes that read, "We are attempting a repair, your business will be safe, your basement will not flood, your memories will not be erased, if you wake in the night and feel your bed inclined, breathe, it's just the city shifting weight." They tucked the notes under doors. Day 4 to Day 6. Adjustments. In the archive, the silver line on Maia's wrist grew warmer when she drew too greedily and cooled when she rested the pencil and thought of sugar donuts and a boy's paper boat. On the streets, the river obliged, inching toward its old bed with the grace of a cat deciding which lap is worth its afternoon. The city complained, and then sighed, and then, Maia believed, rolled its muscles the way one does after a long nap. Day 7. They stopped and waited. Waiting is a kind of prayer too. The azure settled with a decisive little slosh. North of the track it made a new old gleam. The tannery's under foundations drank like a parched throat. Dockyard 3 looked suddenly as if it had been designed for this moment. No floods. No drowned basements. Only damp. People came out on balconies with tea and cameras. Old men cried. A woman with a chipped tooth laughed and rolled up her trousers and waded in, then shrieked at the cold and kept laughing. Maia went to the mayor with a report written like a story because that was the only version that felt honest. She quoted Petter's crankiness and the lullaby on the stairs and the boy's boat and the culvert smell. She wrote the sentence. The map was wrong in a way that told a deeper truth, and the river accepted the invitation to be more itself. She even wrote about the silver line on her wrist, though she called it a somatic metaphor, to give the mayor a legal handhold. The mayor read and read again. Then she signed the city's acceptance. "If they sue us," she said, "we'll return to this. Everything returns. X. The price." The morning after, Maia woke to find the silver line on her wrist gone. She flexed her hand and felt both loss and lightness. She dressed, went down to the river with a bag of oranges, and watched boats adjust their lines as if shrugging into a better coat. When she reached Petter's shop, the drum's map had changed. The river ran north of the track, silver bright. The names of places you return to had multiplied. On one edge someone had added, "The place where something impossible was done carefully." She found Petter peering at a ledger. He looked up and took her in, the looser posture, the weary joy, and nodded. "You were right," he said without saying about what. Then he added, "The city took something from you." "What?" Maia asked. "Whatever let you draw lines between then and now without bleeding," he said. "It wants you to be heavier, so you stay." She touched her wrist and felt an absence like the echo of a bell you weren't entirely sure had rung. Alec arrived with coffee and a bruise on his knee shaped like a comma. "I fell," he said cheerfully. "In celebration." "What now?" "Now we return things that never got a map," Maia said. "Like what?" he asked. "Like the common names for winds on the South Hill," she said. "Like the secret staircase behind the opera where stagehands kiss. Like the hand signal the ferrymen used before they had radios. Like the smell of iodine after summer storms. Like your uncle's old bow, which broke on the night he decided he couldn't afford to keep playing." Petter's head jerked. "How did you?" Maia lifted the drum. Across its painted skin, the night map shimmered as if crossed by a breeze with a name you had to return to remember. "Because everything leaves a line," she said. "We just need to learn how to listen for it." 11. The long work. They got good at it, which is to say they got humbler and more precise. You don't fix a city. You tend it. They left little silver petitions in the cracks and the city answered with a bolt loosened here, a door unstuck there, a bench moved 3 centimeters so the sun would catch it at exactly 4 in the afternoon for a woman who couldn't sit anywhere else without her hip aching. They drew back no more rivers. One is enough for a life. People began to bring them requests. Not prayers. Isola does not pray to humans, but confessions of misalignments. The school bell is 5 minutes too late for the bus. Someone took the 7th step out behind the theater and now a whole generation trips. My grandfather's pocket watch stopped the day the tower clock was repaired. Is there a way to set them both right without making time strange? Sometimes the answer was a shrug and a sympathy biscuit. Sometimes it was a note to the mayor with a line Maia had learned to write. It will be easier if we call this a correction instead of an innovation. The mayor learned to laugh before she argued. Petter stopped calling himself a crank and called himself a keeper instead. Alec kept riding his bicycle across the city, delivering packages and petitions, and the map on his arm acquired a new line that did not fade, a path from the archive to wherever Maia was. What happens if we leave? He asked once at the water's edge, not quite facing her. We don't, she said, not because the city forbade it, but because she'd learned where she belonged. Whether she ever left later, she left this answer in place to hold the day. 12. The error moves on. A year after the river's return, a visitor came whose shoes were too clean and whose questions were too sharp. She was a geographer from the mainland, famous for telling cities rude truths. Isola braced. I came to see the error, the geographer said to Maia, who tried to look as if she had never made anything move. And the correction. Which will you call it when you go home? Maia asked. Anomalous compliance, the geographer said dryly. Let me take you to the night map, Maia said. Petter showed it as one would show a wound that had become a scar that had become a tattoo you could own. The geographer bent over it and breathed out softly. Huh. What? Alec asked. This cartographer wasn't drawing streets, she said. They were drawing recurrence. Look, these annotations. Where I go when I want to be forgiven. Where I go when I want to be wild. Where I go when I can't fix it but I can hold it. No wonder your river listened. Rivers love recurrence. They are recurrence. So you'll write something kind? Maia asked. I'll write something true, the geographer said. Which is kinder than kind. A month later, the paper came. The title was dense but the last paragraph was not. Maps sometimes err toward the heart. When they do, correcting them with facts alone is amputation. Better to ask what tissue the error has formed, what function it has acquired, and whether in a city's metabolism, returning to an older course is in fact the most modern move. Petter framed it behind the register. The mayor clipped it and smiled wryly. People read it at dawns, arguing with the words between bites of donut. 13. The small flood. There was one flood. It happened in late autumn when the rain had nowhere to go. The river rose in full throat. The northern bend lapped at Dockyard 3 and drank again. The culvert coughed up leaves. Basements filled knee-deep. For 3 days, Isola remembered what danger felt like. Not theoretical but cold and economic and immediate. Did we do this? Alec asked, teeth chattering. We did part of it, Maia said. But the rain did most. We chose a city with a river. Rivers do this. They helped. That was all. They hauled wet rugs, mopped, made tea. Maia found the woman with the chipped tooth bailing with a bucket like a punchline to a joke that had gone on too long. Is the correction still worth it? Maia asked her when the water dropped. The woman leaned on her bucket and shrugged, then grinned. The boy who pushed me in sent me a message yesterday, she said. He said he'd been thinking about the tannery wall all week. He apologized. He's 59. She wiped her nose on her sleeve. Yes. It's worth it. 14. The unmapped future. On a spring morning when the almond trees wore improbable clouds, Maia climbed the hill without Alec, without Petter, without anything but a pencil and a biscuit in a paper bag. She stood where the city let her see itself and she allowed the future to arrive not in plans but in little dots she did not connect. A child would grow and ask her why the river kinked like a dog's ear in that one spot. She would say, because it remembered an old language. Someone would try to build a high walk that pretended to float. The city would hate it and the walk would hum with unhappiness until someone with patience moved it 3 meters and it would finally exhale. Petter would teach a kid to tune a violin by listening to the room breathe. Alec would slow, then speed, then slow again as if his bicycle were a clock that could be wound with love. The mayor would sleep late one morning and wake to letters piled in gratitude and anger and both. Maia would age. The line on her wrist would occasionally tickle, like a phantom bracelet, especially when she passed the tannery wall. She took the biscuit from the bag, broke it in half, and ate the bigger piece with no guilt. She looked at the city and felt the tenderness of a cartographer who knows her map lies and loves it anyway for what it reaches toward. When she went back down, the river winked like a co-conspirator. 15. Everything returns. Years later, when the archive had added a room called the Gallery of Corrections, where people brought their small survivors and laid them down like seashells, bus schedules that finally lined up, a theater stair restored, a repaired pocket watch that agreed with the tower clock within 3 seconds on cold days. Maia stood among glass cases and felt, for the first time in weeks, neither tired nor hungry for more. A child tugged her sleeve. "Is it true you moved the river?" the child asked. "No," Maia said and smiled. "It moved and we let it." "Can I move something?" the child asked. "Probably," Maia said. "If you do it carefully. If you listen. If what you want to move also wants to move." The child considered this with grave ferocity. "I will move bedtime," they declared. "Good luck," Maia said, solemn as law. She stepped outside. The evening laid itself over Isola like a soft sheet shaken out from a line. In the tannery window, someone had placed a bowl of oranges under a sign that now read "Return 1, for luck." Petter's door was propped open and the glass harmonica was singing a thin pure note nobody's fingers had set loose. On the river, a boat passed, floating exactly where it should be and also exactly where it once had been. The map of returns had never been complete and would never be. It was good work to keep it slightly wrong in all the right places. Maia walked home by a route she'd had the privilege to help remember. On her wrist, for a heartbeat, the phantom bracelet warmed and then cooled, as if an invisible hand had squeezed hers and let go. She imagined it belonged to the city, not as something vast and faceless, but as something human-scaled, the size of an ordinary life, the size of a bench at 4 in the afternoon where the sun found you and said, "Stay."